We'd thank Jesse for feeling comfortable enough to share this with us, disclosing, highly personal information. And we'd also proceed with asking more open-ended questions to really discern if there's any further evidence of possible abuse, beyond what information we were provided with during the scenario.
Awesome. And then how about what red flags did you all notice?
So yeah, the red flags would be Ashley getting angry at random, isolating Jesse from Jesse's friend group, and most egregiously threatening to out Jesse's gender identity in a public situation at work. Those are the three real big ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just one more kind of insidious one that I want to plug that for those of you who maybe noticed that red flag checklist I included earlier today, there's one red flag in there that is wants to get serious too quickly. And so this kind of celebrating their 1 month anniversary, I don't think that's like a glaring red flag, right? We know young people who are in relationships for their first time are celebratory, and that's wonderful. But just kind of one for us to be aware of. So if they are really serious and want to get serious too quickly, that might be kind of one of those red flags. Awesome. And then how about number 3?
So we would validate Jesse's feelings, explain that we understand where Jesse's coming from, and we understand the tenuousness and the tenuousness of the situation and how, I guess, uncomfortable and unpleasant this would be in Jesse's perception.
Yeah, absolutely. So validating that experience, right? We learned earlier of some of those abuse tactics as it relates to LGBTQ folks in teen dating violence relationships, or really any relationship. Yeah. Lauren, anything we want to make sure we add to questions 1, 2, or 3?
I know when it comes to the response of Jesse, Marley and I had also thought about responding to them asking if it's normal or not, maybe saying, well, if I was in this situation, I would let my partner know that this isn't okay and maybe try to set a boundary. For me personally, this would make me stop and think if this is something I'm okay with in a relationship. So as Marley had really gone over in teen dating violence, we don't want to make the partner an enemy, but maybe providing your own perspective and not, making them as the bad guy would be helpful to give some insight for Jesse to maybe consider that maybe that isn't okay, things like that.
Exactly. And that's why I think taking this approach of like, what are those red flags? So we're addressing those behaviors and we're not demonizing Ashley, but we're saying, did you notice that, what you shared with me is they get angry out of nowhere, or I heard you share with me that they kind of isolate you from your friends. How does that make you feel, right? I think you can kind of pick out some of those behaviors, to Lauren's point that they're sharing, without kind of making it about Ashley, but making it about that behavior. Awesome. And then number 4, Rebecca.
Okay, so this is one of those situations that none of us like because it's not anything that would be a report at this time. This is one of those things where you would just keep watching and observing and hoping that nothing happened. But APS wouldn't investigate.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you all so much for contributing to that. And another kind of intention that Lauren and I had with this scenario is how are we honoring non-binary folks, right? How are we getting comfortable using pronouns like they, them, which I heard you kind of use when you shared this experience. And so I think that's like always really good practice. We know that there can sometimes be a learning curve when we're using pronouns that we're not really used to, but we want to make sure we're honoring folks' identities. And I hope that that was kind of a takeaway with this scenario and with this group, kind of increasing our comfort level in working with folks of all genders. Awesome. All right, and I think this is our last scenario. So if we can go ahead and turn it over to group 5 to let us know what the scenario was and then how you all responded to it.
I'm checking to see if anyone's turning on their video or trying to unmute. I don't see anything yet.
Looks like we maybe have a comment in the chat that I can go ahead and read, but Lauren, definitely let me know if anyone is deciding to share. So Stephanie shared, this was an extremely, so I guess I'll start with, wait, sorry, Stephanie, I'm not sure if yours is specific to, yeah, okay, so it looks like yours is specific to the last group, but I'm gonna go ahead and read the comment. So this was an extremely difficult scenario with so much to unpack. I worried about the client's autonomy. Yes, the red flags and alarms went off reading the scenario, but you have the client in front of you. How do you address their needs, questions? Also, along with the ethical piece, they may be being exploited by someone in a power. Oh, this is number 5. Sorry, let me just reflect on this one more time within this context. I'm just gonna quickly read this just so we're all on the same page for those of us who weren't in group 5. So it says, a self-advocate receiving VR services from DES discloses to you that she has been in a relationship with a woman who works at DES as a VR counselor. She's excited about this relationship and she plans to celebrate their 6-month anniversary by taking things further and wants advice on how to practice safe sex. And so let me just, sorry if I confused anyone, I confused myself. So Stephanie shared, this was an extremely difficult scenario with so much to unpack. Absolutely, like I said, we really tried to make these nuanced and really as applicable as possible. So I worried about the client's autonomy. Yes, the red flags and alarms went off reading the scenario, but you have the client in front of you. How do you address her needs and questions? Also, along with the ethical piece, she may be being exploited by someone in a power position. Yeah, I'm really glad you all reflected on the power dynamic there. Anything else that anyone from group 5 wants to share as far as how you all responded to any of these specific questions we have here?
Marley, just so you know, it looks like Stephanie added, to clarify, the group jumped into reporting the counselor, which would be the person's partner, the DSVR counselor.
Interesting. So I think this is such a nuanced one, and I would love if anyone else, even not in group 5, has thoughts on how they would approach this, what actions they would take. I think Stephanie brought up a good point about that person's autonomy. And so how would we really evaluate if there is a power imbalance there? In what capacity does this self-advocate work with this VR counselor? I don't know. What do you all think about that? Or maybe another question to help us, for those of us who would not report this.
Well,
oh, go ahead.
I don't know. The one thing I was just thinking is that we have a confidential caseload for people that actually have relatives or close relationships with VR staff and that, so that nobody else can really access it but the counselor, the upper management, and the people working directly on that case. So that would be one way to make sure her services were done confidentially.
Mm-hmm.
And that, but it certainly puts that person in a power position on her, and so
yeah.
And
yeah,
certainly would report. Yes, I would report it for sure. I mean, that's 2 separate issues, but yes, I would report it.
And so I want us to kind of pay attention to this one detail here. It says, so a self-advocate receiving VR services from DES discloses to you that she has been in a relationship with a woman who works at DES as a VR counselor. And so while we know from this scenario that the self-advocate is receiving the VR services from DES, it isn't clear to us, based on what we know here, that that is their VR counselor. And so I wonder how that might change how we would respond to this. What do you all think?
I was going to bring up the same thing, Marley. I was
I
like,
still,
is
I mean, it goes really, I
wrong?
guess it's the bottom part where that the person is not practicing, doesn't want to practice safe sex, which puts her, you know, imminent risk, depending what this person's health situation is. And if, you know, I don't know if I'd reported based on that, but if there was other information, because that would be a decision to make if she doesn't want to have safe sex, and she has to make a decision, does she want to stay in that relationship? But if the person has HIV or one of the communicable diseases, then it becomes more of a legal and an APS issue as well.
Yeah, and so, sorry, keep going.
I'm sorry, definitely therapy. I would say this is definitely an issue, probably an issue that needs to go into therapy as well, because that's pretty complex.
Yeah, and so I just want to clarify, so she plans to celebrate their 6-month anniversary by taking things further and wants advice on how to practice safe sex. So I don't know that the you know, person who works for DES is necessarily like wanting to engage in non-safe sex or unprotected sex, right? But I think instead, we know that the self-advocate is coming to us for resources on safe sex. If that, I don't know if those details are helpful.
I misread it. I'm sorry. I misread it. Yeah, no, I totally misread it. So
No worries. Anyone else have any kind of perspective or thoughts they want to offer on this one? I think this perhaps is you know, really close to home, right? We're talking about VR counselors here, VR services. I don't know.
I think there's places like Planned Parenthood still that provide information on how to, you know, how to practice safe sex. I mean, is there religious things that are involved here as far as her belief system? You know, is there other agencies that may need to be involved depending on her? I don't know. So that's kind of, I would look at trying to get her to a place that could get her the information, being I'm not the expert on that, and then her doctor, you know, referring her to her doctor, gynecologist, whoever she feels comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely. Having resources and information on safe sex and agencies to point folks to as far as accessing those kind of tangible resources is definitely good.
And Marley, we just had a comment that said, did she enter into the relationship with the VRC prior to receiving services? Which I love that you're asking that question, because when Marley and I looked at this, we were like, there's so many unknowns, right? So I think one of the first actions we thought was important to really assess better, you know, what's happening, because did they meet and, you know, completely outside of this, and the advocate wasn't getting services yet, and then they independently got services and happened to be dating someone who also works at DES? To me, that wouldn't raise any red flags. So I think, you know, trying to understand that better to see if there is a power dynamic at play and if that is inappropriate for the relationship. If they were previously their VR counselor, right, that would be inappropriate. So trying to understand better, because we don't know. And so it's easy to jump to conclusions and to assume because we're really nervous for this self-advocate. But to really better understand what's really going on and take a step back and just sort of get those details first.
Exactly.
This is also a fun one because it doesn't mention ages at all. So as an APS representative, like I said, if we don't know that they're over 18, that's a whole nother issue. Like what if one of them's underage? We don't know. However, from my perspective, I was just going to say this isn't something that I don't think APS would investigate this, because it looks consensual. You know, she sounds excited. She wants to celebrate. And maybe, you know, if it was her VR counselor that they were working in a professional capacity and then took it to a personal level, maybe that's an HR report, but I don't think it would be an APS report because it's not illegal. Don't think it's ethical, but it's not illegal.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Rebecca. I don't know if someone else was unmuting.
I unmuted quickly, Marley.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, you can't see me. So something else we also wanted to touch on in when it comes to them asking about advice on how to practice safe sex, obviously you guys are not necessarily the experts on that, but when you're giving them resources or places to go, we just thought it was really important to note that it is LGBTQ inclusive because this is a woman dating another woman. So knowing that is important in the context of practicing safe sex and making sure that the places you refer them to are inclusive and safe for someone of that identity to go to.
Exactly. And another thing relevant to this being a same-sex relationship is we just want to be clear that if we do determine this, there is this kind of power differential that is problematic or that it's an HR issue, I think we would want to be really clear to the self-advocate that the issue is because of kind of their partner status as a person who works for DES, and it's not because it's a same-sex relationship. And so we want to just, you know, really be trauma informed and aware of the identities that folks hold when we're addressing these types of issues. And like I said, just being really clear that the issue is not that it's a same-sex relationship, but if we do determine this is an issue, it's because of this other thing. And so I think that's just a consideration that's important. Cool, and let me just look in the chat here. So our referral form asks if they have any personal relationships with VR employees. They're supposed to go to a special caseload, I believe, something like that. So, I mean, that to me, because there's a procedure for that, that means that things like this happen, right? Folks, you know, I used to work at an organization that my partner also worked for, right? We know, which is a little different than this, but my point is we know there are scenarios and situations where folks might be seeking services from this larger entity, and perhaps their partner before or after seeking those services also happens to work for that organization. And so, like I said, something to be aware of, something that is a reality, and it's why you all have policies and procedures for things like this. Anything else that anyone has questions on or wants to kind of contribute or clarify to this scenario?
This is Natalie. I'd put it in the chat, but I always love this question because, you know, when things make us uncomfortable, then we typically know it's pushing up against our ethics, right? That's what we know. So just a reminder, I put in the chat. So of course we have policies and procedures, as well as our policies say we follow the code, right? The Rehab Commission Code of Ethics. And there is a particular section actually that I put in there, section A, and it does talk about the counseling relationship and different types of roles and relationships with clients. So I just wanted to mention, I think the worrisome part, and many of you mentioned this, is the vulnerability part of our clients. And I think that's why it affects us so. And at the same time, yes, we can have clients who are related to us, who are loved ones to us. And we've heard it a couple times mentioned, that confidential caseload. So absolutely, I'm married. My husband's name is Eric. He's a chef. Should he not be able to perform the duties of a chef because of a terrible knee injury? And this is a real story that's currently going on. So if he's unable to perform his job, absolutely, I could refer him to the vocational counselor program. And yes, he would be considered on the confidential caseload so that I would have absolutely no access to his case. And that would mean he's a current client. So the difference is he's not my client. And I just wanted to clarify, because in the code, it does talk about current clients, former clients, and vulnerable former clients. So there is definitely a distinction in that code of ethics. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think this scenario kind of shows, because of our you know, concern and wanting to advocate and you know, just be conscious of the things that our clients need, we might feel really quick to report, but sometimes it's not just so black and white, right? These things are nuanced. They require more discussion, more understanding, clarifying, asking questions, and communicating. And so I think for those who were really quick to say, well, we need to report this, this is not okay, there's a power imbalance, I think that comes from such a good place. But I think it's something that we just have to pause on and think, well, is something inappropriate happening here? Is there a power imbalance? And so, yeah, I appreciate you all engaging in such a great discussion here. Let me see what else we have in the chat. So it says, I also mentioned to wait a number of years after her VR is closed to have a relationship with a VR counselor because of the code of ethics. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Awesome. Excuse me. So that was our last scenario. Kudos to you all for participating in that. I hope that those were helpful. I hope that you were able to kind of look at some of the resources available, see how those apply. And I hope, yeah, I hope it was helpful. And so for those who feel like sharing, either unmuting or sharing in the chat, what were some of your takeaways from this scenario activity? Either the specific scenario that you worked on in your breakout room, or just some of the discussion we had as a larger group. What were some of your takeaways there? And if it's helpful to also kind of respond, I have a similar question on the next slide, so you can respond to either if you feel comfortable. What are your takeaways from the day? We'd love to hear if there was something in particular that you found useful, how this will be useful in your roles, just anything that you thought was kind of helpful and a great takeaway from today's training. We'd love to hear it. Let me open up the chat. So we have so many different aspects of domestic violence. Lauren shared here, I know I've done these before, but I always hear new perspectives and creative ways to address issues. Makes me think out of the box. Love it. Anyone else want to share as we wrap up? No pressure. But if you all feel like sharing, we'd love to hear it. Some of the final things we have. So congratulations, you finished today's training. Want to thank you all for making it through an all-day training. I know that isn't always easy, and Zoom fatigue is real. So I appreciate you all powering on and participating. We were just sharing during the breakout room that this was a really wonderful group. And so we appreciate working with you all. Thank you all so much.
Marley, really quickly, Rebecca, I know that you unmuted. I know Marley cannot see us. She's working on a laptop in the office. So Rebecca, I didn't know if you had something you wanted to add.
To me, it's just like, I was going to say, I don't want my kids to grow up because like, I always watch the teen dating violence one and I'm like, I don't want them to grow up. But really, I think what I took away from today was that it's education and communication. And it really helps to have this presentation to kind of like fill my tool belt as a parent, and also as a worker. And then I noticed we had a couple more comments in the chat box as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that, Rebecca. Sorry, I don't know if you were wanting to read those or if you want me to.
Oh, I think, yeah, I can. They're coming in super fast, but Jelka said she gained much more awareness, and thank you. And Charity, I like yours. It helped me look at things from different angles and having more heads contributing. And Stephanie said she liked the intersectionality piece. Yes, and then there's a lot of thank yous, very much appreciated. And yeah.
Great. Sorry I put you on the spot there, Rebecca. Thank you so much.
No, that's fine.
Cool. I appreciate all the nice, sweet, affirming messages in the chat. We really appreciate sharing this info with you all. So just kind of the next steps, I guess, like housekeeping at the end. I don't know if we only use that term in the beginning of trainings, whatever. But so certificates will be emailed out to folks. We're trying to get those out early next week, but we're kind of playing catch up. And we also need to do certificates from our last training we did with some of your colleagues, not last week, but the week before. So like I said, our goal is to get those out to you all early next week. We just have to kind of verify attendance. And so I'm not sure if Lauren already did. I think she probably will shortly, is share the post test. So we would super appreciate you all participating in that post test, so we can kind of measure how hopefully we learned from the pre-test. So take some time to do that. And then the next action item for you all is the evaluation. So we really appreciate you all doing that post test and completing that evaluation. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing in case I want to be able to see folks. So yeah, those are the big action items before you leave today's training. Please be sure to fill out both of those things. And then I'll turn it over to Lauren, Rebecca, Natalie, anyone who wants to kind of share some last words here.
Just wanted to share a couple things because I see them coming to me. So one, in regards to PowerPoints, please remember that all of the materials for today are in the invitation. So you hopefully received an updated invitation link from me today, but if you go to your Google Calendar and simply look at the invite for today, you're going to notice that has 8 attachments. So that includes the agenda, all the scenarios, and all the PowerPoints. But if you have any trouble accessing them, please reach out to me directly. Awesome. I saw somebody got it. Also wanted to mention, I know you folks are probably starting your post test, but I've had a question about CRC certificate. So for those of you who do have are a certified rehab counselor like myself, please know that that is separate from the certification, the completion forms from ACES-DV and Rebecca. So I appreciate them sending those to all of our participants, but please remember, if you are a CRC, that evaluation is required. So I will be verifying not only attendance, but also completion of the evaluation before sending out the CRC verification forms.
Awesome. And then just a reminder, once you have that evaluation form and that post-test complete, you are good for today. So thank you all once again for such a wonderful training. Like I said, this was a wonderful group. Thank you to Lauren, Natalie, Rebecca. It's been so wonderful working with everyone on this project, and I'm just grateful for all of you here.
So you'll have time to fill out that post-test and evaluation link. We'll be here. But if any of you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to ask them. We're here to answer any questions. And you might see me commenting the same post-test and evaluation link. I appreciate all your thank yous. And if you need to go back to find the evaluation link, I'm going to keep posting it in the chat so it's easier for you to find it. It's the same link though.
And I'm going to go ahead and stop recording because our presentation is done. So I feel in the recording, they probably won't want to watch this part. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop it.